Well, I was coming from a one-to-one district as well. Following 2020, we went one-to-one at my previous district, and Belton here has actually been one-to-one since the dawn of the iPad. In the beginning, they have since moved over into the Chrome space as far as the affordability and um, availability for Chromebooks. We are actually in talks right now on the cell phone debate, the national cell phone debate of, do we get rid of phones? Do we incorporate phones? Do we do nothing? Do we make sure they're out of sight, out of mind? We have campuses, and if I don't mean to speak to the one-to-one, but we have campuses that they ban phones altogether, and the students are actually, um, I would say, more relaxed and not have the FOMO, the fear of missing out feeling during the school day. We have schools that allow them during lunch and passing period, and then we also have schools that don't have any restrictions whatsoever. So what we've been working through in this first semester, and we've met with parents, we've met with teachers, interviewed students, we've talked to assistant principals, administration, trying to get as much buy-in as we can to have a universal phone policy and procedures.
Welcome back to Leader Saving Lives, where we meet with K-12 district leaders and talk about innovative strategies around student safety. I'm your host, Ray Bledsoe, and in this episode, we'll be talking to Dr. Lee Moses, Director of Student Services at Belton ISD in Belton, Texas. Great to have you, Lee.
Nice to be here with you, Ray.
So I know you came over to Belton from Rogers, which is, I think, next door east. Is that right?
Yes, sir. I was a high school principal there for 11 years. Before that, I was the middle school principal. Before that, I was an AP at a neighboring district for 4 years. Offensive coordinator at a coaching at for a year, and then an athletic director, and then started off my career as an English teacher and football and track coach.
Very nice. This will be a good conversation because I played defense in football, so we'll have a good back and forth.
Well, I actually walked on the A&M football team in 1998, so
Is
we
that
can
right?
we can talk off camera later about that.
We for sure will. I know you also serve as the president of the Texas Association of Secondary School Principals. Tell us more about that.
Actually, I am the past president. As
Ah,
of this past June, I passed the torch to David Warren out of Farmersville, but I did serve last year as the president of TSSP. I was the second vice president back in 2020 and then progressed to the presidency last year, visiting all 40 or all 20 regions in the state of Texas twice, one time in the fall and one time in the spring, a lot of travel. Uh, I sat on the board for the Texas Association of Student Councils and also the Texas Association of Future Educators, and conducted the business of the association for all of the secondary school principals in the state of Texas.
wow, that's pretty big. So you did that in addition to your regular job duties as well.
It is non-paying, yes, sir. I was running a high school as well as traveling around the state of Texas, meeting with principals.
How'd you manage all that?
I have a wonderful wife. I had a supportive superintendent, and I had a great assistant principal that supported me through all of that.
Very good, very good. All important pieces to have, right?
Absolutely.
Well, so let's get into it. Tell me about some of the specific safety protocols in place there at Belton to help with physical safety of students.
As far as the elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools, we have done an outstanding job. And I say we, I'm very new in the position, but Belton took a pretty strong stance on safety and security of students. We have two SROs tied to both of our high schools. Each one of our middle schools has a dedicated SRO as well. And then we also have armed security at all six or seven of those campuses, along with armed security at all of our elementary schools. So each one of our schools is covered um, with uh, with the stance of safety being the number one concern for our kids. And when I say SROs, they are really a resource officer. They're not. They're. It's not a situation of punitive manner. They have to step in when needed, but they do a wonderful job of being a resource for our kids and kind of bridging that gap of um, seeing them as people and seeing them in their role so that after they graduate, it's not a situation of bad guy versus good guy.
Yeah, and I love you that you made that clarification because I think a lot of times when people hear SRO, they think, if you do something wrong, you're going to get in trouble and it's going to be negative and have negative consequences. But it sounds like you really partner with your SROs to build those positive relationships with the students.
We really do our best. Whether it be my previous district, when the state of Texas mandated that we had to have armed security at each campus. It was an unfunded mandate. They didn't give us the amount of money that was needed for that, so districts had to step off and do that on their own. But we try to make sure that they are a resource. We have our armed security is actually former veterans that are um, on campus and there to build relationships with our students. You're talking from a guy that his mother, my mother, was a 26-year veteran police officer for Austin PD. She actually worked 6th Street on walk and beat for many of those years. And then my stepmother was the secretary for the Texas Department of Public Safety and worked with a lot of state troopers in the Hayes County area
Yeah, so if she worked Sixth Street, she saw everything, I'm sure.
and reminds me of it every day.
That's awesome. So you've got a lineage of just safety and security just in the family alone.
Oh, by the
What do
time I
you?
got home, they already knew what I did.
I can imagine they had eyes and ears everywhere, right? Yeah, yeah. What are you guys doing in Belton to prepare students and staff for potential emergencies, and what type of training do you provide around that?
It's funny you asked that. We were talking about our emergency operations procedures just yesterday. Uh, Over the SROs, we have a safety and security coordinator. He is a former police officer from the area. We also, in addition to that, we have an emergency preparedness coordinator who is also a former police officer. And both of those gentlemen care of our emergency preparedness and the safety and security of our districts, all the way K through 12. They handle all of our drills, they handle the protocols, they handle the SROs, crossing guards, um, doors, door checks, fencing, um, monitoring of cameras, all of the things safety security. We have dedicated personnel to that. Along with the safety security, we also have a director of health services. She takes care of all of our nurses. Um, and then, if you were to go over into the mental health side, we have a director of counseling that oversees all of our counseling services and um, monitors closely with that so that we can be prepared, that we can respond accordingly, so that we're there for our students. We also have a anonymous report system so that when students need to reach out, that is available for them. We also have a system in place that monitors all the things that are searched or typed into Google Docs or any of our devices when students have a cry out so that we can respond to crisis immediately.
That is great. And I love to hear that you guys incorporate the mental health piece too. I think a lot of times we focus so much on the physical security of our buildings and even our devices. We forget that the mental well being of the kids are a part of student safety and well being as well.
No, it's paramount. And I've even seen an uptick since 2020 being a campus principal and us being in silos at home, and then coming back to campus. Um, I really think that we operated in a vacuum for so long that now we're reaching out to for one another, and sometimes our kids don't know how to reach out. They feel like they're on an island. They feel like they're the only ones that have a problem, and it's important for us to let them know that they're not on an island, they're not alone. There's many people that feel the same way they feel, and that their needs are heard. In my previous district, I actually added a counselor. I added a counselor following 2020. I added a socio-emotional counselor, and she just took care of all the social emotional needs of my kids. Um, and I had another counselor that took care of the secondary readiness, like what happens after graduation, so that every student that walked the stage had a prepared um, had preparation for what happens that day after graduation.
That's pretty comprehensive. I think, sometimes it stops whenever the students reach a certain grade. If it's, graduation, it stops. But I also think that what you guys did in the way of preparing students for beyond graduation is paramount too.
Oh, it was nothing for us to have kids that were 2 and 3 years graduated want to come back and fill out the FAFSA, the financial aid for college. They decide that when they turn 20 or 2 or 3 years after graduation, they come back, and we would absolutely meet with them, and once they're ours, and we take responsibility for them because um, one thing I tell kids is that you may not remember what you made in math class when you meet people, and nobody's ever going to ask you what your grade was in English, but they're always going to remember where you're from. And
That's
so
right.
we want the hometown, we want Belton, we want our wherever you're from, to people to be remembered, um, that was a good place, and that I grew up in a good place.
Yeah, yeah, Lee, that's great. How do you guys partner with local law enforcement and emergency services?
Well, that has been that's been it's been an opportunity for growth with Belton ISD. Um, the strange thing about Belton is half of the district resides in Temple, so it takes great collaboration between one high school resides in Belton, which is Belton PD, and then one high school resides in Temple, which is Temple PD. So there has to be really great collaboration between the schools and the police departments for the emergency preparedness and the emergency response. And we have great partnerships with both city municipalities, great partnerships with the emergency preparedness with Scott and White Center that's nearby, and so God forbid that we ever need to call on them, but we have forged those relationships long ago to help us with that emergency preparedness in the event that we needed to call on them.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Um, can you share any examples of how Belton has dealt with safety incidents in the past and what you've taken from those situations?
Well, being new in the position, I would be wrong to speak about our emergency preparedness, but the situation that comes to mind most recently is we had a person that was um, in one of our parking lots and didn't need to be there, but when the phone call came, the cavalry came. We had great response from our PDs. We had great response from our SROs. We had great response from our administrators from the previous camp from the campus, and then me and my assistant superintendent of operations responded within 10 minutes to the campus for support. And the problem was resolved. Everything ended up being um, it. It worked out as great as it could have been.
Yeah, yeah. And it sounds like you guys had some really good communication internally and partnerships internally to make sure that that didn't escalate beyond where it needed to.
Absolutely. We've got apps on our phone that any one of our employees can um, call on the cavalry, as I like to say. If anyone needs a response or if anyone's in danger, we have great technology along with human response to answer those calls.
Awesome. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about digital safety here. I saw that your campuses have also received some national recognition. Belton High School has been included on the list of the nation's best high schools compiled by U.S. News and World Report and Newsweek. And I see that Belton New Tech High School at Wascow and South Belton Middle School have also been recognized as Apple Distinguished Schools for their implementation of the district's one-to-one digital learning initiative. How has one to one increased student engagement, in your opinion? I know you're relatively new, but
Well, I was coming from a one-to-one district as well. Following 2020, we went one-to-one at my previous district, and Belton here has actually been one-to-one since the dawn of the iPad. In the beginning, they have since moved over into the Chrome space as far as the affordability and um, availability for Chromebooks. We are actually in talks right now on the cell phone debate, the national cell phone debate of do we get rid of phones? Do we incorporate phones? Do we do nothing? Do we make sure they're out of sight, out of mind? We have campuses, and I don't mean to speak to the one to one, but we have campuses that they ban phones altogether, and the students are actually um, I would say more relaxed and not have the FOMO, the fear of missing out feeling during the school day. We have schools that allow them during lunch and passing period. And then we also have schools that don't have any restrictions whatsoever. So, what we've been working through in this first semester, and we've met with parents, we've met with teachers, interviewed students, we talked to assistant principals, administration, trying to get as much buy in as we can to have a universal phone policy and procedures. The districts on either side of us have gone, one has gone the route of the pouches where they lock them up and put them up throughout the day. The other one has gone the route of they just have to be out of sight, out of mind. So, in talking digitally, I think we're in a state of flux as far as between the one to one and the cell phone debate that many states are talking about. Our TEA commissioner has actually called on our state legislators to make a statewide cell phone ban because of some of the digital threats that are coming across when students are being less than responsible with their devices. I've seen states like Florida and Arkansas that have taken a statewide ban to cell phones in schools. And so I think if I were to speak on behalf of Belton ISD, we are in a state of flux, but we're going to be making some decisions moving forward to try to take the distractibility away from our students while their instructional day is going on.
yeah, how's the community feedback been on that?
Um, I would say that the community feedback is completely opposite than the kid feedback. The kids don't see it as a problem. Their parents, at a rate of about over 50 to 60%, say that they want a ban of the cell phone. They don't want them. They want them out. They want them put away. Um, and I would say that's the same way for the teachers. But of course, when you interview kids, that's not a big deal. I can manage it. But when when you have situations to where you're on your phone listening to music, you're ignoring emergency drills, you're ignoring teacher instruction, you could be ignoring someone in the hallway if something were to happen. And I always like to use the illustration of what happened in New York on the subway. There was a shooter that went into the subway and started to do his violent act. And he was able to do that and get away because everybody had their earbuds in and they weren't paying attention. And so when you look back on incidents like that, you try to make sure your kids are alert and aware throughout the day, and you know, using their senses and not just locking themselves into their phones.
This episode is brought to you by Gaggle. Gaggle is the industry leader in protecting students' physical safety and mental well-being through best-in-class technology and people solutions. With over 25 years of experience, Gaggle analyzes billions of pieces of student online content and provides thousands of teletherapy sessions to students and staff each school year. Ready to level up student safety? Connect with Ray Bledsoe at rbledsoe@gaggle.net.
I think we miss so much when we're looking down, right? Sometimes we're not looking up at what's happening right in front of us. To your point about the subway, so that's really really important.
That's why my computer's behind me for most of the day. I like to be in the moment with people. I think they still like that human element, and that's something we've kind of gotten away from. McDonald's put in those their AI ordering booths. Now they're taking them out because people they don't want to deal with them. They want to talk to a person.
That's right. I think the pandemic forced us to get a little bit ahead of ourselves, and as far as just human interaction goes, I think we realized some efficiencies like Zoom or some things that we could do remote, but at the end of the day, I don't think there's a substitute for face to face human interaction.
Uh, One of my first visits with my staff is that this is going to change the world. You're going to have people that continue to wear a mask. They don't want to shake hands, um, and we lost a little bit when we got behind our screens and didn't have that face to face visit.
Absolutely. Going back to you guys at Belton being one to one, how are you monitoring those devices for instances of things like self harm, bullying, weapons detection, things like that?
We've got a program that we use that anything that's typed in on those devices, if we have a computer element to it, to where the tech can alert. There's also a secondary human element where if there's something that needs to be reviewed by a human, we actually have a human element that reports it directly to the campus administration when something relates to self harm or something relates to a weapon or something along those lines, or any type of less than positive interaction between students. There's a tech component and then a secondary human component, and that human component can alert a phone call tree that goes all the way, that if no one answers, it goes all the way to the respected police departments of both Belton and Temple.
That's awesome. Is that tech component and human component, are they both outsourced, or is the human component a part of Belton and the tech component is from somebody else?
It's outsourced. It's part of a program that we
They're both
utilize.
they're
Hmm.
both the same program. That's great. That's
Yes,
great.
sir.
And I always like to say, we have all these devices going back to the phones and the computers and things like that. We have all these devices, and the kids kind of have, I guess, the autonomy to type and message and say whatever they really want to on a lot of these, but not necessarily. So I think with districts like Belton and others who've taken a stance on number one, the cell phones, and just trying to see what differences that could make. But then secondly, looking at the monitoring of the devices and making sure the kids are doing what they're supposed to do, I think that's a step in the right direction as far as safety goes.
Completely agree. Completely agree. I like the fact that we're using technology for the benefit. I also like the fact that we're not ignoring the human element when it comes down to the safety of our kids.
Yeah, technology to police the technology, right?
Yeah, but it the human element puts in there some common sense when it comes down to um, situations.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, I always like to say too that the monitoring piece is just one part, right? I think that's the back end, and I say this a lot just in my conversations with folks. But when you're looking at something that's being caught on a device, whether it's an image or some instances of self harm or suicide ideation, that's almost like the end of the story. What are you guys doing in the way of therapy? And we'll go back. I know we talked about this earlier in the conversation, but I think therapy is what kind of gets you to the root cause of the things that you find in the monitoring.
Well, we have three types of intervention. You have campus counselors that intervene in these situations. We also have a online counseling center that we can. I don't want to say we can have kiddos assigned to it to where they can meet with someone, maybe not their counselor, maybe an outside resource. And then, of course, we do have we have some centers in our county that deal directly with mental health. And when parents see the need, or when we see the need, we have the ability to make those determinations.
How do you go about identifying the students who might be struggling with mental health issues?
Well, I think it starts with their outcry at first, and then every one of the alerts that we get is investigated by one of our staff members, and the determination is then made between the parents, between the school, and between the mental health professionals. Just what are the next steps?
So you guys are making the correlation between the alerts and whether or not they need to be referred to somebody to address those alerts on your own. You're kind of making that connecting those dots on your own.
All of the alerts are investigated. Yes.
That is awesome. Um, and I think in a lot of districts, what happens is they're separated, right? You put the alerts in one bucket, and the counseling and the therapy services are in a totally different place, and nobody or a lot of folks aren't making the correlation between the two. But it sounds like you guys have that figured out.
We have great communication between our administrators, our alert system, and our counselors in house, along with our exterior counselors that are in the area, and the online counseling programs that we have. Yes.
Great. I asked earlier about community engagement around the cell phone ban. What is Belton doing to engage parents and the community in supporting student mental health and safety matters?
We have a very strong community engagement. We have hosted evenings all during the summer for parents to be able to engage with us, not just about cell phones, but just about their students as well. Just the other night, we had a ribbon cutting ceremony. We had a celebration for some of our students. They're exceptional students with all of our athletes in our band and cheerleaders. We have great community engagement at most of all of our events, and we take feedback. We encourage feedback. Every one of our um, every one of our administrators, our schools, we want feedback from our community, and on a continuous growth model that we all try to have for our community, so that we can meet the ever growing needs for them.
That's the only way you know if you're being effective, right? If you get that feedback, positive or negative. I always encourage districts to do exactly what you're doing. Um, what do you guys do to develop and update policies related to student safety and mental health, and who's involved in that process?
Top to bottom, everyone's involved. Um, we have, of course, I've already spoken about SROs and safety, security, and drills, and our policies and everything. But from our school board to our administration to our campus staff, all the way to our students, we get input from everyone on all of the changes or growing needs. I spoke a little bit about the 88th ledge for the state of Texas, and the fact that we have to have armed security at each campus. And we've gone above and beyond that. Not only we have armed security, but we have multiple at some of our campuses. And um, just speaking with one of our SROs today that went down and supported an elementary campus. Um, So we involve all stakeholders when it comes to any type of changes or improvements that we can make.
Are there any upcoming changes in policy that you're particularly excited about?
I think the 89th Ledge coming up in January will, um, I think there'll be some changes made. One thing that we did here in Belton that I was a part of in my infancy and my position is that we held a student safety summit. We have each one of our campuses has a student safety committee that's headed by one of our staff members and a group of students. Because who's going to tell you better where you need to improve than the kids? Because they're
That's
the
right.
ones that are on the campuses. So we hosted four students from each one of our campuses, K through 12, all 21 campuses that we have. We hosted four students here last May, and we got them in a room, and then we had breakout sessions. We talked about everything from transportation, we talked about buses, we talked about bathrooms, we talked about safety concerns, we talked about digital concerns. And we had the kids share out, and we really learned a lot that day. We had administrators that were had some roundtable discussions. We fed them lunch, and then just really appreciated their leadership. The kids came on campus or came here to the central office, and they were oohed and awed, and really appreciated their leadership once they left. And I think it's something that we jumped out on and made it happen. And I was really proud of the result that we got and the feedback that we got, that kind of improved the start of the school year for this year.
I love that, Lee. And I think a lot of times too, when those students go back to their respective schools, those peer-led discussions about safety, security, anything that's of the interest of the students, I think those are sometimes more impactful than us adults having those same conversations, right?
Oh, we only think we know. The kids will tell you.
That's right.
The
Yeah,
kids will
yeah.
tell you.
What did you arm the kids with to take back to the schools, just in the way of pushing some of the initiatives forward once they got back?
I think student voice was the main thing we armed them with, to let them know that we are listening, to let them know that you do have an impact on your campus. Um, more we hope to have more of a positive impact on campus rather than a negative impact, but it's ultimately their choice. And so when we encourage the celebrations of our students that are leading from the front, we're hoping those positive things bleed over into other positive things. And when you have campuses with 5 to 6 up to 2,000 kids on a campus, uh, you're going to have some negative interactions. You've got 2,000 kids on a campus, you've got 100 staff members. You're going to have some negative interactions, both silent and physical. But you hope the positive interactions outweigh the negatives at the end of the school day.
That's right. Absolutely. Um, so, some final thoughts here. What message would you like to leave with listeners about the importance of prioritizing student safety and mental health?
Um, I want most people to know that it's not taking a back seat in our schools. And 22 years in doing and working with this, this is God's work. I fully believe that. Um, I think schools in the ones that I've chosen to work in, I try to start off with, I think schools are about 20% academic, and I think schools are 80% um, physical or emotional. I think 20% academic. We want to teach them reading, writing, arithmetic, science, and the elements. But I think 80% of it is just learn to working with each other. How to come alongside a fellow student and help them with their homework, or how to come alongside a fellow student of learning how to deal with a tough situation, or how to come alongside a student that may be struggling, and be a fellow to them, and not just make it about, well, what grade did you make, or have it more be about what impact did you make on your campus today. both with your friends and your administration. So that may not be popular as far as when you look at test scores or academic performance, but I really think our public schools are 80% just how to work with your fellow man.
Very well said. I think I heard partnership and collaboration equals impact. Is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Each one of our kids is sitting in a different seat, and as administrators, we try to think about it, and teachers too. Not everybody goes home to the same thing, and each one of our kids are in a different seat. You have students that parents have already told them that once they graduate, they're out of the house. You have students that are college bound and it's paid for. You have students that would like to go to college but don't know how to pay for it. You have students that go home to no food. You have students that go home to take care of they're all in a different seat. And when we try to meet them where they're at is when we do our best work. Um, because fair is not equal and equal is not fair. And some of our kids need more than others do. And that's okay. But we have to meet with it. We have to meet them where they're at. And um, parents aren't keeping the best ones at home. They're sending you the best they have. And when we take our teacher hat off, take our administrator hat off, and we humanize with them and practice empathy, we do our best work.
Lee, I think that puts a nice ribbon on everything. We appreciate the time. It's been a pleasure. The conversation's been great. And thank you, everybody, for joining us on another episode of Leaders Saving Lives. Until next time, stay informed and stay safe.
Thanks, Ray.
Thank you for listening. If you found this conversation valuable, please consider leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform. It helps others discover the show and supports our mission. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'll see you next time on Leaders Saving Lives.